So Alex just dropped NORO KAKUJA Rework, and I will say this is probably one of the most insane reworks he's done. This kit is very complex. He also gave NORO KAKUJA a remodel. As you can see, it has smooth skin now and it has new animations, making it good to look at. And in this video, I'll be showing you all the moves and what you need to know about NORO KAKUJA. Before I start the showcase, a few things have been changed. The NORO KAKUJA price has been increased from 50 million yen to 100 million. And the RC requirement for the second stage is 50 million RC and 1000 levels. Okay, so before I actually start showcasing this thing, there's a couple of passives that I must explain. The first passive being that NORO KAKUJA has two modes. The first mode is Slim and the second mode is Stick. Each mode has its own style and its own moveset. The second thing being, NORO KAKUJA is a massive blob of RC, which means you cannot dash or jump. Although you are compensated with mobility moves, so that shouldn't matter too much. As for not being able to jump, I think it doesn't matter as much because you have abilities that make up for it. So the third passive on NORO KAKUJA is that it has a passive that's similar to IXA block. So projectiles that are far away from you will deal less damage. However, if the person firing these projectiles stands closer to you, those projectiles will deal more damage. This is only to make it a lot easier to fight players that are using ranged weapons. The highest amount of damage that you can reduce on ranged projectiles at max range, being 300 studs, is 50%, and the lowest amount of damage that you can reduce, that means being close, would be around 16%. On to the first mode. The first mode is Slim. It gives you a 50% running speed increase, which means you can move around faster, and you have a passive 20% damage reduction, which means all abilities will have their damage reduced by 20%. Although this does stack with the other passive that I spoke about, that being that projectiles deal less damage, so it pretty much stacks up. Now onto the first ability, that being the block change. So you don't have a regular block, instead you have a mobility tool, which pretty much lets you leap around, and you can leap twice before it goes on cooldown. So while using this ability, you pretty much gain iframes and you cannot get hit during it, so it's a pretty nice mobility tool. The range is pretty good, and it also applies additional knockback when you use it against a player. Although one thing I want to mention is that it doesn't deal any damage, so you can only use it as mobility or as a small offensive tool by knocking people away from you. Now on to the first actual ability. The click is a simple bite. So click is a bite, and the click will sustain you. So each time you land click, you heal a small portion of your health. And the healing will always stay the same. It doesn't increase, it doesn't decrease. So as long as you land click, you will regenerate health. Now on to the second ability. Like the second ability is a simple shove. It just pushes them away and it applies bleed. And the bleed does last for a pretty long time, but it doesn't deal much damage. The range on E is from close to mid, so it's not the best ranged option, but it does work against melee weapons or players that are standing pretty close to you. Now for the R move, it's pretty straightforward, but it also has a mechanic to it. So if you tap R, you'll push your opponents away, then pull them in. The range is pretty long. And now for the second mechanic, if you move while using R, you pretty much do a sweep. This sweep will knock players to the side along with you, although it doesn't stun them, so they can dash away right after. So as you can see, they can dash right after. So you cannot follow up with R plus E right away because they can't just freely dash. Although this is a pretty nice mobility option, and it does let you do something else other than just pulling and dealing damage. You can use it twice in a row before it goes on cooldown. Now on to the F move. The F move is pretty straightforward. You pull them in and then you kind of knock them away. Although the pull isn't really visible, it does stun them when you use the move and if somebody is in your path. So you can do cool combos like this. Now on to the final ability. If you hold down C, what's going to happen is you're going to jump in here and start spinning around with your weird tentacle thingies, and you will deal damage. It has a cooldown of its own, and it has a pretty good range. You can close gaps with this, and you cannot really get hit by it because you're in the air, unless somebody has a vertical move with a vertical hitbox, of course. This move also does not shred block, which means you cannot use it to destroy someone's block. As you can see, he still has yellow block. On to the second note, if you tap C, you pretty much bump more RC into your body and you become slightly thicker, which will change your moveset. So in this mode, the movement speed buff gets removed, but in return you gain a 25% damage reduction boost, which is 5% more than the slim mode or the skinny mode or whatever you'd like to call it. And you get permanent anti-grab. This means that Takekichu, Ginkui, other stuff like Owl, Melee Arm cannot hit you, and they therefore do not stun you. Although grabs will still interrupt your moves, just be wary of that. So when you block, what will happen is you do a screen, and for each player that you get, you'll get more damage reduction. And even when you don't hit any player, this buffs the damage reduction from 25% to 50%. And per person that's caught in your scream, you'll get 4% additional damage reduction added on top of the 50% damage reduction. So if I hit this person right here, I'll get 54% damage reduction instead of 50. And this can increase the more players are around you. The duration will also scale with how many people are in your range. So the more people you hit with it, the more damage reduction you get, and also the longer the duration. The way you can see by if you still have block armor is by the cool outline that you have on your character when you use it. As you can see, I have a blue outline. Now let's get on to the actual kit. So the click is a simple shove. 50% of the damage gets turned into lifesteal, so pretty much 50% of the damage you deal will be pretty much converted into a health. And it also knocks your targets up. The hitbox on it isn't as big, but it is still pretty viable if somebody dares to get close to you. The E is practically the same as the first mode, otherwise known as slim mode. It pushes them away and it applies bleed. It's practically the same. There's no big difference. Same cooldown, same everything. Now onto the R move. The R move is a bit special. If you tap R, it's going to pull them in like the first mode, right? But if you hold R, you'll spawn a circle and anybody in that circle gets pulled towards you. It's pretty much a Ginkui R move, except it's way bigger, has way more range, and can pull in a lot more targets because of the bigger range. Now onto the F move. Practically what it does is you pretty much release a giant explosion which does apply knockback, and it also spawns a blob. Flaming that blob will restore 7.5% of your health, and if you hold it, the explosion becomes larger, which means you can obviously deal a bit more damage, and it spawns 2 blobs instead of 1. So pretty much this F just exists for sustain, and it is probably one of the best sustain moves in the game right now. Now on to the last ability. If you hold down C, you jump in the air and slam down. This deals huge damage. It also knocks enemies up and is probably really good for team fights, as you can just pretty much close a gap and deal huge damage to people. Although this ability doesn't deal 30% of someone's health, it does have a pretty big hitbox and it deals around 15% of their health.